Do you remember a time when Azeroth felt impossibly large, like an endless world waiting to be discovered? Back then, logging into World of Warcraft wasn't just about leveling up or gearing out. It was about that pure, unfiltered sense of adventure. Those were the days of classic WoW, when every trip felt like a journey and every battle was hard-fought. Today, we're taking a walk down memory lane, reliving the unforgettable experiences we all shared. If you were there back in those early days, then you know exactly what I mean. Let's dive back in. It all starts with your first steps in Azeroth. For many of us, it was in Northshire, Valley of Trials, or Teldrassil. Remember that feeling when the loading screen finally disappeared and you found yourself standing there, a tiny figure in a vast, vibrant world? You looked around, took in the atmosphere, and the music hit. I still remember that first eerie track in Tirisful Glades and how it sent chills down my spine. Whether you were a brave human, a cautious night elf, or a daring orc, you probably spent a moment just soaking it all in. There was no hand-holding back then, no arrows on the map, no instructions on what to do next. Just you, some vague quest text, and a blinking question mark in the distance. Those first steps were more than just game mechanics. They were a call to adventure, and everyone who's played since then remembers their own unique first step. Who remembers their first cross-zone journey? Maybe you were a young night elf, making that long trek from Teldrassil to Ironforge, a trip that took you across half the world. Or maybe you were a human, who had to find his way to the wetlands by foot to meet up with some friends. No mounts, no shortcuts, just a lot of running, a lot of dying to creatures you hadn't seen before, and an overwhelming sense of being in a world that was far bigger than you. You remember the murlocs waiting on the shore in Westfall, those bandits lurking in Redridge, or the terrifying crocolisks in the wetlands. But it didn't matter how many times we died. Each journey left its mark. We were forging our own stories, one grueling step at a time. And then there was the Deeprun Tram. And for Horde players, their first boat ride from Durotar. The Deeprun Tram was magical, a futuristic-looking underground train connecting Stormwind to Ironforge. I can still remember the sense of awe when I boarded it for the first time, wondering if maybe there were more secret tunnels like this hidden all over Azeroth. For Horde, those first boat rides from Ratchet or Durotar to Booty Bay, they were more than just a way to get from A to B. They were a whole experience. The salty air, the sound of seagulls, the slow wait as the boat cut across the ocean. It all felt so real. Every time you saw that boat in the distance, your heart would race a little. You'd run as fast as you could to catch it, hoping you wouldn't have to wait for the next one. Missing it meant an extra few minutes of downtime, but somehow, even that felt like a natural part of the journey. And who could forget the first time you grouped up with other players for a dungeon? Maybe you were trying to conquer the deadly depths of Deadmines, or perhaps you were brave enough to try Wailing Caverns. You had to walk all the way to the entrance, of course, since there was no dungeon finder, and getting there was a journey in itself. Forming a group took patience. You had to actually talk to people, negotiate who would tank, who would heal, and who was brave enough to pull. I bet some of you still remember the name of the first healer who kept you alive, or the tank who stood his ground even when everything seemed lost. And it was never easy. There was no telling how things would go. Sometimes you'd wipe, sometimes you'd argue. But when you finally reached that end boss, the sense of accomplishment was like nothing else. And let's be honest, none of us will ever forget Mr. Smite or the endless struggles against that one boss we just couldn't defeat. And let's talk about the first mount. Back then, level 40 felt like a lifetime away. And even when you got there, the gold cost was brutal. Every copper counted as you saved up for your first ride. Remember grinding endlessly, doing every quest you could find, selling everything just to hit that gold target? And that day you finally handed over the coin, took those reins in your hand, and rode across Azeroth for the first time. There was nothing quite like it. You felt like you'd truly earned it. Sure, it was slow, a mere 60% speed boost, but it was yours. And that sense of pride, of finally being able to keep up with the world around you, was unforgettable. And now we come to the blood-soaked battlegrounds of Hillsbrad Foothills and Mill. Back then, PvP was raw, unpredictable, and chaotic. There was no structured battleground system in place. Instead, Alliance and Horde would clash in Hillsbrad with an intensity that felt like a war. It was a constant back and forth with players rallying to push the enemy back to their base. There were no objectives, no formal reward system, just a bunch of players, some healing, others charging into the fray, battling for pride and the thrill of the fight. It was a mess, a beautiful, chaotic, thrilling mess. And if you've ever spent an afternoon defending Mill or assaulting South Shore, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Who remembers the first server-wide events, like the opening of the Dark Portal or the epic battle of Ahn'Qiraj? For days, the entire server was focused on a single goal. People gathered from all over, working together and feeling like they were part of something huge. It wasn't just a quest chain or an item grind. It was an event, something that brought everyone together. You'd see familiar faces from across the server, strangers fighting side by side. Those events showed us that we were part of something bigger than ourselves. We were all adventurers, fighting for the same world. World of Warcraft has evolved and changed over the years, but those memories, those golden moments, they stay with us. The friends we made, the nights spent in dungeons, the random encounters on the road to our next quest, those are the things that made Classic WoW unforgettable. Azeroth was more than a game. It was a world that felt alive, a place where every journey mattered, every friend and foe left their mark, and every memory carried its own story. If you were there, if you played in those early days, then you carry a part of that magic with you. And sometimes, when you close your eyes, you can almost hear the soft echoes of the world as it was, waiting for you to log back in. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to Classic WoW. If these memories brought a smile to your face, don't forget to hit like and leave a comment with your own unforgettable WoW moment, and subscribe for more stories from Azeroth's golden age, memories of a great time back when WoW got us all hooked.